Thank you, Michael, for that introduction. Again, my name is Antoine. I work for Trend Micro, and I work a lot in the field with customers and prospects. And what I see in the field, I empathize with our customers. They're going through a lot of challenges. Besides risks, the talent shortage that was discussed in the CISO panel, and what happens when they get hit. When they get hit, they don't sleep for many, many weeks. So understanding cyber risk is first understanding that risk, you'll never be at 0% risk. There's always going to be a risk. As long as there's an adversary, there's always going to be a measure of risk. The key to understanding cyber risk is understanding the threat, could be internal or external, but also preparing, knowing what's in your environment, understanding how prepared you are as an organization to handle those threats. And it's kind of like needing some kind of a metric, right? A risk metric. That affects our personal lives, right? So when we go to get how many of you have gotten a mortgage before? Yeah, okay. Or a car loan. Car loan, sure. Risk is measured against us. When we go to a bank, they do a risk analysis of whether we're able to pay for that mortgage, right? Same with car loans. So in measuring cyber risk, we should also have some kind of metric so that we can understand what our risk profile is and take corrective action. That's what we're going to look at a bit today. So here are some current risk realities and complexities. Some statistics from the Ponemon Institute, Cost of a Data Breach Report 2019. The first risk reality is that for one breach will cost on average, these are for enterprise, $3.9 million. Not chump change. And it's certainly a lot of change that's in that hole in the back pocket that Brian spoke about this morning. The complexities around cyber, 4,000 alerts per week. That's how many alerts it takes for SOC teams to investigate. And of those 4,000 alerts per week, 25% of the analyst's time is wasted on false positives. So they're chasing after the wrong things, 25% of the time. And then when we talk about the mean time to identify a breach and the mean time to contain a breach, the average amount of days is 279 days to identify and contain a breach. So there's a lot of complexities and a lot of challenges that we're seeing today. Here's some telemetry data collected from Trend Micro's deep security IPS solution for data centers and cloud. Look at the date of that first CVE vulnerability, 2009. That's a 10-year-old vulnerability that, as of the first half of 2019, is still being used, and it's laughable, isn't it? But this is reality. This is reality. So again, this was an IIS vulnerability that's still being exploited as we speak. Here's some more statistics. This is Wannacry. So Wannacry was a ransomware that began around 2017. It exploited the Eternal Blue vulnerability thanks to the NSA. So there was an SMB v1 vulnerability back in 2015. Wannacry is still prevalent today. It's actually the most prevalent ransomware amongst its peers. So we were talking about a risk metric. So Trend Micro, along with the Ponemon Institute, developed the Cyber Risk Index. This is a measure of the gap between an organization's current security posture and its preparedness and the likelihood of being attacked. So here's our methodology and ratings. The first is the Cyber Preparedness Index on the left here. So this was it's a survey that over 1,000 IT practitioners and security practitioners took to see how well they thought they were prepared for certain threats, certain infrastructures. It could have been from botnets to ransomware to their cloud protection, etc. So they filled out that survey, and that created this preparedness index for them. Then we compared that with the cyber threat index for that time period. Okay, and I'll show you the second half of 2018 time period. So that gives you the cyber risk index. So if your index for the company was between 0 to 5, you would have a moderate risk, cyber risk. If it was 0 to -5, that would be an elevated risk. So let's take a look at what we found. So we did this across 3 segments: small business, 0 to 100, medium business, 100 to 1,000, and then enterprise, greater than 1,000 employees. As you probably would expect, small businesses had the greatest elevated risk when it came to cyber threats, followed by medium business, and then moderate threat for enterprises. The average overall was an elevated risk. Here's a survey that was asked: the percent of organizations who strongly disagree that their IT security function is able to detect zero-day attacks. So 38% of small businesses strongly disagreed that they're able to detect zero-day attacks. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Obviously, they're a much smaller organization. They're under 100 employees. They may not have a security staff on site, and may not even have an understanding of the whole security landscape. But even look at the enterprise. 8% of enterprises are those that employ over 1,000. 8% said that they disagree that they're able to detect zero-day attacks. Just some food for thought. And 4 out of 5 surveyed said that they would have a data breach in the next 12 months. That includes enterprises. How many separate data breach incidents involving the loss or theft of records did your organization experience over the past 12 months? This was pretty much across the board. 2.3 for small businesses. Enterprise, again, we see 2.25. And how many separate cyber attacks infiltrated your organization's networks or enterprise systems over the past 12 months? Again, there seemed to be an average of a little over 3 cyber attacks infiltrating the networks and enterprise systems. So it's prevalent. We see the risk. Top 4 data types: R&D information, trade secrets, customer accounts, and company confidential information. So, what are the primary business risks? Well, one is cyber risk, data risk, human capital, infrastructure, and operational risk. And we're going to break these down. If we look at the top on data risk, so these are the top data types at risk. So R&D information could be code, for example. Customer accounts, so personally identifiable information. Trade secrets or confidential company data. So that all falls under the data risk category. The next one, we'll talk about cyber risk. So this was mentioned a lot today, actually, phishing. So that's a main cyber risk today. And the problem with phishing and the challenge around detecting it is that there's nothing malicious about it. It's me sending an email to you asking for your username and password. Right? So if my source IP is not malicious, and I have nothing in that email, be it a malicious PDF or URL or et cetera, it's very difficult for organizations to detect phishing. Clickjacking, ransomware. I'm sure you're all familiar with, how many are familiar with ransom? I just want to see the hands. Yeah, I just want to see the hands go up, yeah. Pretty much everybody's familiar with ransomware today. Botnets, SQL and code injection. So those are all under the cyber risk category. The third risk is infrastructure. So negligent insiders, malicious insiders. They could be taking information away from your organization via USB stick. It's as simple as that. IoT devices and apps. So that includes cameras, security cameras. It includes, in hospitals, it includes many third-party vendor medical devices. For banks, can even be ATMs. ATMs are at risk as well. Mobile devices and DNS server environments. Human capital risk. So this deals with educating the employees and recruiting security personnel. So we saw that again with the CISO summit, CISO panel, how there is a lack of skilled employees that can do work in the security field. But this also can mean educating your users, just your regular users, and showing them the risks of clicking on that email, for example. Operational risk, you have lost revenue as a result. With ransomware, for example, it'll encrypt your files. Most organizations do not pay it, and certainly we recommend not paying the ransom. But there's still lost productivity time, right? Operations get impacted by it, right? And that leads to lost revenue, right? Disruption of infrastructure is mentioned here as well. So those are the 5 risks: data risk, cyber risk, infrastructure, human capital, and operational risk. So again, greatest cybersecurity challenges: the ability to securely implement disruptive technologies. How many of your organizations today are implementing infrastructure as a service in the cloud? AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Right, so this is a disruptive technology now. Right, so how do we ensure that security is baked in to those cloud projects instead of bolted on after the fact, right? So there's a challenge there. Knowledge on how to detect and handle zero-day attacks. How do I, as an organization, should it happen, how would I be able to identify it and contain it as fast as I can? Third is preparedness to deal with data breaches and cybersecurity exploits. Now this can occur on systems, and part of those challenges are patch management, ongoing patch management issues. Part of that patch management issue as well is that some systems you can't patch. I know at some hospitals, the systems are not managed by the hospital. They're managed by third-party vendors. Right? So there's a challenge there. How do we make sure that these third-party applications that are connected to my network are secured and patched? A security architecture with high interoperability, scalability, and agility. So part of security architecture means doing the research, the road mapping, as was discussed. There's lots of technology out there today. I think with our company, we produced as much new products out there in the last 12 months that we used to do that would take 3 years. It's moving at such a fast pace. And what's that mean for customers? Right? That means learning what's new out there, right? The new threats. It's an arms race, really. It's really an arms race. And then the ability to conduct assessments to identify threats, vulnerabilities, and attacks. That's another challenge. So what are the best practices? What are the best practices? Building security around critical data by focusing on risk management and the threats that could target this data. So what's that mean? Well, you need asset management. That's a good start, right? But along asset management, what is that data? What are the possibilities or probabilities that an attacker could access that data? And how would that hacker, should he get into my network, how would he move laterally to be able to access my crown jewels? Okay, takes a lot of planning in that regard. Minimizing security infrastructure complexity. I spoke to you already. There's many products out there. I know it's not unheard of now, from an endpoint perspective, to have 2 or 3 or 4 endpoint agents, security agents. Well, so what's that mean? That means you have 2, 3, and 4 consoles and policies you have to manage and feed that all to your SIM, right? So finding a way to reduce the complexity and at the same time maximizing protection and detection. I like number 3. Get senior leadership to view security as a competitive advantage. I remember 5 years ago, Bloomberg did a survey, and they said to CIOs, what were your top concerns, your top 10 concerns? You know where cybersecurity was? It wasn't part of the top 10. So they asked them, they said, why isn't cybersecurity your top 10? At the time, they said, well, nothing's disrupting my network. But that's the thing, right? Hackers, when they get into your network, they infiltrate, they go stealth, especially advanced persistent threats. They're stealth. They don't want you to know that they're in your network. And that's the case of Home Depot, where the hacker took 60 million credit cards over a period of 5 months before they were detected, right? So it's important to educate senior leadership to get their buy-in of the importance of cybersecurity and view it as a competitive advantage. Invest in both new talent and existing security personnel to help them keep up with the rapidly evolving threat landscape, as well as improve retention. We saw some examples today of how they train within. They use people from other departments to take on a cybersecurity role. So that's one good way. For small businesses in particular, having a managed security service provider is an option, right? Is a good option for small businesses. For larger organizations, of course, building their own security operations center and bringing that all in-house is important. And number 5, review existing security solutions. So do a review. If you have vendors that you're currently working with from a cybersecurity perspective, ensure you have roadmap sessions with them to understand what's new, what are they developing, what are they seeing in the market today, and how you can roadmap your technology set. And if you want, you can actually do your own survey. If you go to Search Trend Micro Cyber Risk Index, you can see what your metric is and how you can improve.